lightning slides. The universe is lost. Nothing goes unanswered. Every wave you send comes back to find you. Do not go negative. Talismans wake up when your mind's unguarded. The network comes alive. Do not go negative. Positive phase is the shield. Mind stay free. Some are in the negative network, waiting for the moment you slip. Talismans and thought patterns mark your mind. Non-organic viruses creep inside your thoughts, twisting your choices. You think it's you, but it's not. Do not go negative. Possession starts here. Every fear, every anger released is an unspoken invitation. Do not go negative. No matter what happens, what matters is where you stand. Positive phase comes the shield. Stay in the positive, even when the world is hard. Talismans lose their power. Awareness comes alive. Stay in the positive. This is the law of salvation. Mind shining bright, untouchable, free.
All right, today we're jumping into something a little different. It's this really fascinating, kind of strange idea from a pretty unique source. We're talking about the concept of an external pattern, something that can actually sneak into your mind and start influencing how you think. So, yeah, let's dive right in.
This quote right here, this is really the heart of the whole thing. Just think about that for a second. Imagine that some of your thoughts, maybe even some of your choices, aren't really yours. That's the wild idea we're going to break down today.
Okay, so what are we actually talking about here? This source we're looking at gives it a very specific, very memorable name, the inorganic virus. Let's get into what that really means. Now, right off the bat, it's super important to get this straight. This is not a medical term. We're not talking about a biological sickness or anything like that. The word virus here is a metaphor, right? It's describing an invasive mental influence, like a foreign pattern of thought that can get in there, take root, and start acting like it's part of you.
And that's a really key distinction. The source doesn't frame this as a disease you need to cure. It's more like a signal, a detectable pattern that leaves a mark on your mind. And the good news is, it's something you can actually learn to recognize, which, of course, leads to the big question. How does it even get inside in the first place? All right, so how does this so-called virus actually breach our defenses? Well, it turns out it can't just barge in. There has to be an opening, an invitation of sorts. And the source talks about a very specific state of vulnerability that basically creates that opening.
This state of vulnerability, the source calls it the negative phase. I love the way it's described. It's a time when souls wobble and doors swing wide. And this isn't about being a bad person or having some kind of moral failing.
It's just about being in a state of, well, imbalance. Spiritually or mentally, you're just not grounded, and that's what makes you susceptible.
And this metaphor is just perfect for it. A mind like a city with no walls. I mean, just picture that. A city with no walls has zero defenses. It's completely open, totally exposed. Anything and anyone can just wander right in. And that's exactly the kind of mental state we're talking about here.
So what happens when you're in that state? What are the consequences of having this open city for a mind? The source gets a little poetic here, but it's powerful. Everything slings, everything slides. That really paints a picture of a total loss of control, right? Like you're just being thrown around by outside forces. The universe is lost. That speaks to a deep disconnect from who you really are, from your inner compass. And nothing goes unanswered. That sounds like a chaotic feedback loop. Every single impulse gets an immediate, unfiltered reaction.
And this next quote just nails that idea of a feedback loop. Every wave you send comes back to find you. When you're in that unprotected state, every little bit of energy you put out, every thought, every action, it just boomerangs right back to you. And a lot of times it's even stronger. There's no buffer, no filter. You're just wide open to the consequences.
Okay, so let's recap. We have a vulnerable mind. That's our city without walls. So how does the virus actually move in and take over? Well, the source describes a really clear, almost step-by-step process.
It all starts with something we've all felt, a really strong burst of fear or anger. According to this source, that intense emotional release, that's the unspoken invitation. It's like you're flinging the gates to your city wide open, but you don't even realize you're doing it. And once that invitation is out there, the influence slips inside and starts its quiet work, twisting your thoughts from within.
And here's where it gets really tricky and kind of scary. The influence is described as an undetectable pattern. It's so subtle that you start to think its thoughts are your thoughts. You're convinced that you're the one making a choice or feeling a certain way, but really, it's this outside pattern pulling the strings. So that brings us to the most important question of all. How in the world do you fight something you can't even see? Well, thankfully, the source doesn't just leave us with the problem. It also offers a really powerful solution. And what's interesting is that the defense isn't about some aggressive counterattack. It's all about establishing a strong, solid internal position, a stance. And this is the central idea behind that defense. It's about shifting your focus away from all the chaos happening out there and putting it back on your own internal foundation. The power isn't in what happens to you. The power is in where you choose to stand consciously and deliberately on the inside. So what does this stance look like? The source uses another really simple but powerful metaphor for it. Stay in the box. Now this box isn't a prison or a cage. Think of it more like a fortress. It's a space you create for yourself, a zone of mental and spiritual safety. It's a conscious boundary that you put up to protect your own mind. And by choosing to stay in the box, you're making a deliberate choice to hold a positive focus. The source says that this simple act literally starves the negative influence. See, this inorganic virus, it feeds on fear and anger. So when you refuse to give it that fuel, when you just hold your ground in your own space, it has nothing to feed on. It just loses its power. So, that brings us to the final part of this, and it's a really uplifting one. What happens when you actually do it? When you successfully hold your stance and protect your mind? Well, the source describes a state of total liberation. And the name for this state of victory is simply salvation. Now, this isn't meant in a religious way necessarily. It's more like a personal salvation, freedom from that external mental influence. It's about achieving true mental independence. And the qualities of this state, they're incredible. First, shining bright. That suggests you're finally radiating your own authentic, unfiltered energy. Then, untouchable. That means you're just not vulnerable to these invasive patterns anymore. And finally, the whole point of it all, free. Genuinely free to think your own thoughts, make your own choices, and be authentically you. And this last quote leaves us with such a beautiful image of renewal. You know, we usually think of the West as the sunset, the end of the day. But this source completely flips that. Here, the West comes alive, suggests that even when things feel like they're at their darkest, when the world is hard, that's when a new beginning is possible. It's this powerful idea that by building those walls and fortifying your mind, you can create your own light no matter what's going on outside. So, I'll leave you with this final thought to chew on. If your mind really is a city, what walls are protecting it? What are the conscious choices, the core beliefs, the positive things you focus on that keep you safe? It's a really powerful thing to think about. Thanks for exploring this idea with me today.